Thank you for having me. I'm not sure if I'm the first person to start into the big fallout block that's gonna come because I missed some of the talks, but you're gonna get a whole lot of fallout today. I would like to take you into the exciting world of linguistics. More specifically into semiotics, even more specifically into atomic semiotics, which is a thing. A few words about me, because I didn't do a slide, because why would I know anything about making slides after 5 years of this? I'm a linguist, not surprising, working as a games business editor by day, doing research by night. I have also no contact information on my slides. Why would you? But if this is all interesting to you, you can find me on LinkedIn as Pascal Marc Wagner or on languageatplay.de. So just prefacing that. I would like to talk to you about what that says. We don't want you to set the world on fire again. That's obviously a reference to a Fallout song used in the Fallout universe pretty heavily by the Inkspots. And the whole talk is based on this book. We will hear a little bit about that later on in another talk and panel as well. It's entirely in German and it's entirely free. You can download it as an open access if the whole topic is interesting to you. Now, to the actual topic. I want to talk to you about atomic semiotics and what that is and what that has to do with Fallout and by that the apocalypse. Now, what's atomic semiotics? What's semiotics? Semiotics is the study of signs and meaning. Semiotics is the field of study that explains why we understand what these symbols mean. So they don't have an inherent meaning. They have a cultural meaning, at least in some instances. We could argue about the face a lot. But without the cultural knowledge embedded in society, in our subconscious or conscious, we have no idea what that weird E symbol means. But we do. And that's what semiotics, the study of signs and meaning, talks about. Atomic semiotics, surprisingly and unsurprisingly, studies the long-term nuclear waste warning systems, just in general for once. For an example, a lot of us have this nice little sticker here. You know it. You probably all know what it means, which is a feat, because it has no inherent meaning. The symbol doesn't say what it says. We just know what it does through cultural semiosis and so on and so on. But it's a real problem that this symbol doesn't explain what it says. And for that, we have a new one, because this one, the left one, isn't actually being used at the moment anymore, because if in, for example, 10,000 years' time, someone finds this symbol, has no idea about our culture, they won't know not to dig here. So atomic semioticians developed, and they made a system, and from that system they made a new sign. The system it's an ISO standard now since 2007. The message has to actually show in some way that it's a message. It has to show that it's about danger in some way and what the danger does to you. And as you can see here, they used warning colors for, hey, this is a message. They used the skull, which is a very useful symbol because it's biologically based. That's something that probably in 10,000 years' time will indicate some kind of danger, hopefully. And you should run. So there's a reaction in that. This is quite an effective sign. It's also not nearly as slick and cool as the other one, but it's about safety. Now, why I'm here. In 1981, the height of the Cold War, the US Department of Energy and the energy concern Bechtel thought it would be a good idea to think about what would happen if it all went to shit. If all the bombs came down, civilization would be destroyed, and we have a whole lot of unexploded atomic bombs, waste, nuclear waste lying around or in some caves. And what if in the future, when people redeveloped maybe the tools to dig through concrete, found this stuff and what they would do with it? So they gathered a task force. It's called the Human Interference Task Force. And it was comprised of 13 very nerdy persons. They were linguists, anthropologists, physicists, not physicians, very important, sociologists, engineers, and some science fiction novelists. And the leader of the pack, the secretary, was this guy called Thomas Sebeok. He was a semiotician. And the task of this task force was to find possible solutions for human interference in nuclear waste disposal sites after civilization had been wiped out or evolved so far into something mutated that no one understood anything what we did here now or in the 80s through archaeology. And they came together, they discussed, everything was highly classified. And the whole reason for this, or at least the point of content that made them start this, was this Yucca Mountain waste site, it was called. There's a photo here, it's placed in Nevada. And if you think this doesn't look like a waste site or any military anything, you would be right. There is absolutely nothing there today apart from a few tunnels. Because, please don't read all this, but look at what I marked. This has been going, the planning stage for this waste disposal site has been going for a while. They started in the 1980s, and then Congress did some stuff in 2022, and Obama said some things, and Trump said some things, and the Biden administration recently said they have no plans to actually do any of this, but the planning stage is officially still on. So let's get to Fallout. This is not Fallout, this is real world. You can see where the Yucca Mountain is. And if there are any people in here who played Fallout New Vegas, and if you couldn't tell by the shirt, it's kind of one of my favorite games, you might recognize this place in the Nevada desert, because this is right next to Nellis Air Force Base. It's where the boomers are situated in Fallout New Vegas. Has nothing to do with their age or state of mind, but that they like to explode things a lot. On this map, there's also a Bloodborne cave, which as a Dark Souls person I also really like. Notably, Yucca Mountain is nowhere to be found in Fallout New Vegas, at least not to travel there as a player. It would be maybe somewhere where Field's Shack is, probably, but there is a nice little ambient side quest called Mr. Radical, or this guy is called Mr. Radical, and he has a funny story. He found a really cool hazmat suit, one of the best hazmat suits the US ever developed, and he found it at Yucca Mountain. And he made it his life mission to put it on and go into the most radiated places he could find in the Fallout world to see how strong it was. And obviously, at some point it wasn't strong enough anymore. We learned this from an audio tape. Nothing else is mentioned about Yucca Mountain, but it's specifically mentioned in that audio tape, and it's the whole region of the game. So that was enough for me to connect these pieces and to suffer you through this talk. Back to the Human Interference Task Force. They had the task to find some ways to get people to know, don't dig there, basically. And they had a lot of ideas, and I'm going to talk about 3 of them because they fit Fallout perfectly. I'm going to start with monuments, which is the most obvious thing. We're going to hear about architecture, I think, a lot more on Frog, but just basically, if you don't want someone to dig there, put it in concrete, make evil-looking spikes, put warning colors at best in biological colors like bright yellow, bright red, and so on there, and hope that they get the message, either because they can't enter or because they are afraid. This is a picture of Fallout 4, where specifically we're gonna get there. The problem is, of course, at some point, this stuff is gonna break down and decay. That brings another problem. We're gonna get to that in one slide. Because I have another thing, as I'm a linguist, we have to talk about language. We could and we should obviously put signs everywhere. Not just the yellow one, not just the red one with the nice little skull. Just right there. Don't go here, don't dig here, whatever. The problem is, we can't read that at some point in time. Just very wobbly timeline stuff. Any philologists and linguists in the chat will probably kill me for that. But after 100 years or so, a language gets funny. And after 1,000 years, it gets unrecognizable to the people who see themselves as the successors of that language. Just very, very basic, broad timeframes. And the Human Interference Task Force had to account for 10,000 years. So they had a lot of, they needed to think a lot about how to trade language onwards and onwards. A good example for this, by the way, is the book Josh mentioned earlier, Canticle for Leibowitz, where no one can read English anymore, but Latin, for some reasons, still exists, which is actually something that they talked or thought about as well. So if we put signs up, we need some kind of Rosetta Stone. So they had some ideas. Maybe every 100 years, you put another sign that says the same thing in some kind of structure, maybe in a spiral around the place where you shouldn't go. So the whole thing gets maybe some cultic reference, Stonehenge vibe, and people just read their way inwards and have the convenient side effect of being able to translate anything else in those languages as well. Rosetta Stone, very important. The whole problem with only doing this is, I think, put very nice with Plushkowitz, who is an Austrian scholar who did something on the subject. There is the irresistibleness of such a decay. We can make that even snappier, go back 100 years with Walter Benjamin, it's ruin porn. Or let's put it in game dev terms. This is, by the way, this is where the other picture was as well. That's Sentinel Site Prescott. It's a big plot point in Fallout 4. It's in the glowing sea where all the bombs fell. And it's where we get, in the main story, to retrieve a nuclear missile so our big robot, Liberty Prime, can haul it like a football. It's, everything here, every decayed structure in these games is a dungeon. I want to go there, there's stuff. So there is no deterrence through these structures in a game perspective. That's Fallout 76, we don't have to talk about that. Point 2 they talked about, if it doesn't cut it to do architecture, let's use people. One of the ideas they had was to put in a dynasty, an elite of people who know about the stuff, who know about the nuclear stuff. And they hand down the knowledge to a selected happy few. They do a dynastic atomic priesthood that hopefully becomes leaders, or at least cultic council to the leaders of people. And they make some kind of religion out of not going there, or at least not digging there. And the HITF hoped that because people are conservative and they want to hold on to power, these groups will pull themselves together. They will not break away or fall out with themselves, with time. And Sebeok, the secretary, the semiotician, was really into this. I'm not going to read this. I'm just going to put it there. He was really into this. He made a website for this. His pupils are still doing the website. And we can find this in Fallout, actually, in several parts. There's Vault-Tec. the upper symbol, which is basically the keeper of knowledge in the Fallout universe. They build the vaults. They also have all the technology. They freeze all the scholars or whatever they do in their experiments. Freezing is just one of them. So they are kind of the atomic priesthood of science in there. We can do this in a trifecta. We have the enclave to the left, which is what remains of the United States government, basically, but make it fascist, more fascist. And it's kind of the keeper of regulations, and it sees itself also as the only one true atomic priesthood, which can work quite well with Vault-Tec. So, and we have the Brotherhood of Steel, which is the keeper of the military, and also sees itself of the priesthood that has to gather all the other technology from all the other guys. Now, that this power can corrupt, I don't have to explain. I just have to play the Fallout games. But even in the task force, I have to speed up. They put this to word when they said, I have to read this, quis custodius ipsos custodes, who watches the watchman, which is ironically the motto of the Brotherhood of Steel. So all of these are not the nice guys in the Fallout universe, yeah. There's also, I have to speed through this, I'm sorry, there's also the Church of the Children of the Atom, which you could say is also one of these priesthoods, but very, very perverted, because they don't seek to get this knowledge away or get the people away from the atom. They seek to become the atom. They want to get this one, glowing ones. They just want to go into the sludge and become the atom, yeah. And that's, funnily enough, the third point the HITF was really into, and here where it gets really science fiction-y. Could you, through genetics, develop an animal, a cat maybe, that shows signs of radiation when it enters radiation? They talked about cats because obviously people like cats, and probably in 10,000 years they still will. And Stanislav Lem, science fiction author, was part of this task force, and the idea came from him. Could we do a cat that loses all its hair when it walks into a radiated field, so people know something is up there? You could encode it in DNA or whatever, and you can see that this really put the fantasies of people to work, because this is an actual build from a picture from the Bund Naturschutz in Germany. They had an article on this. And also this led to the best French word, in my opinion, which is radiochat. I'm sorry, I can't speak French, but it's just amazing. These are the same two people who criticized basically with the Brotherhood of Steel motto that you shouldn't trust these atomic priesthoods. You need to build redundant systems over redundant systems over redundant systems. So basically, you should do any of this. What did it do? As you can see, running joke, absolutely nothing was used there of what the HITF said. But I hope this presentation was still not worthless, because the ideas went through the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, and so on. The Fallout team has never actively alluded to using them, the Fallout teams, I should say. Maybe Josh can say something about that. But these ideas have been part of culture and pop culture in the West since the late 80s. They are so weird, they are getting again and again described in pop science, in journalism. You can find them in the Fluter from the Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung in Germany, for example. They have articles on that, just because it's so weird and so cool. Science has never let them go, especially in the German-speaking Central Europe, for kind of obvious reasons in the 80s. This was a big deal. The Zeitschrift for Semiotic, did a lot on that in the 80s, and Robert Posner from Switzerland was kind of a leading head in the field of atomic semiotics. Fallout is cultural satire of the US Cold War perspective. So all of this in the culture, in the subconscious, in the news, might have influenced the people making Fallout. At least Fallout 1, it was the development of Fallout 1 is almost contemporary. Fallout 1 came out 1997, so just a few years after the end of the Cold War. I'm gonna lead you out with another Plushkowitz quote, because I really like the article and I can really, please read it. Here are the sources. Download the book. Thank you.